The message came at 4 in the morning, Galactic time. Every communication screen in every station across the known galaxy lit up at the same moment. The words were simple and cold. The United Terran Federation withdraws from the Galactic Accords. All diplomatic ties are now ended. All non-human ships inside Terran space must leave within 72 hours. This is final. Ambassador Kong Suho stood in the middle of the Terran embassy on Station Vela. He was a tall man with tired eyes and gray hair. He had served as humanity's voice to the galaxy for 20 years. Now he watched as his staff moved quickly through the building. They were destroying files. They were packing bags. They were preparing to leave forever. There was no panic among them. No confusion. They had known this day was coming. They had prepared for it in secret for 3 long years. Every human in the galaxy had received their orders months ago. When the signal came, they would move as one. Suho looked out the window at the alien city below. Millions of beings walked those streets. They came from hundreds of different worlds. For 3 centuries, humans had lived among them. They had traded with them. They had laughed with them. They had believed they were friends. They had been wrong. On the bridge of the diplomatic ship called the Resolve, Admiral Park Yuna gave her final orders. She was a small woman with short black hair and eyes that never seemed to blink. She had commanded ships for 30 years, and she had learned one truth above all others. The galaxy did not respect kindness. It only respected power. All Terran vessels, she said into her communicator, begin withdrawal to Sol System. No delays, no exceptions. Across the galaxy, human ships began to move. Trade vessels abandoned stations where they had done business for generations. Research ships left experiments unfinished. Mining operations shut down overnight. Billions of credits worth of goods were left behind. The aliens watched in confusion. Ambassador Vorith of the Hegemony stood on his observation deck and shook his large gray head. He had 4 eyes, and all of them were narrowed with doubt. "What are they doing?" he asked his assistant, or leaving counselor. "All of them." Vorath made a sound of disbelief. "They will return? Humans cannot survive alone. They are packed creatures. They need others. This is just a tantrum, a political game." But deep in his stomach, Vorith felt something he had not felt in centuries. It was a small, cold feeling. It was fear. On Earth, Director Beek Mina sat in her office beneath the mountains of Korea. She was the head of Terran intelligence, and she had spent 15 years collecting secrets. Her walls were covered with screens. Each screen showed a different file. Each file contained proof of betrayal. She had evidence of the plague the Hegemony had released on New Sol Colony. 4 million humans had died. The official report said it was a natural disease. Mina knew the truth. She had recordings of collective officials selling the locations of human merchant ships to pirates. For every ship that was attacked, the collective took 20% of the stolen goods. She had the sealed vote from the Galactic Council. 147 species had gathered in secret. They had voted unanimously to classify humanity as a subordinate species. Under galactic law, this meant humans could be used as cheap labor. It meant their colonies could be taxed at higher rates. It meant they would never have a vote that mattered. The galaxy had smiled at humanity for 300 years. Behind that smile was a knife. Mina closed her eyes and remembered her grandmother. The old woman had survived the plague on New Sol. She had watched her husband and 3 children die in agony. She had spent her remaining years telling anyone who would listen that the disease was not natural. No one believed her. They called her crazy. They called her paranoid. She had died alone, still telling the truth. "I believe you now, grandmother," Mina whispered. "And they will pay." On Station Vela, Ambassador Suho walked through the empty embassy one last time. He stopped at a window and looked at a group of young aliens below. They were playing some kind of game, laughing and pushing each other. They had no idea what was happening. They did not know that everything was about to change. A young officer approached him. Her name was Lee Jimin, and she had only joined the diplomatic corps 2 years ago. Her eyes were wet with tears she was trying to hide. "Ambassador," she said, "I don't understand. We have friends here. I have friends here. Why are we doing this?" Suho turned to look at her. His face was gentle but sad. "Do you know what happened on New Sol?" asked. "The plague," she said. "It was a tragedy. It was murder." Suho replied. 4 million of our people. Killed by a weapon designed by the hegemony. Do you know why? Jimen shook her head. 'Cause the miners wanted better pay. That's all. They wanted to work fewer hours. They wanted their children to go to school, so the hegemony killed them. They killed 4 million people to send a message. Jimin's face went pale. That can't be true. I have seen the files myself. The council knew. Every major species knew, and they did nothing. They let it happen because humans are cheap labor, because we are useful, because they do not see us as equals. Suho put his hand on her shoulder. Came to the stars with hope, he said. We believed that intelligent beings would be wise. We believed that advanced civilizations would be kind. We were children, and we learned a hard lesson. And the galaxy does not reward kindness. It punishes it. He turned back to the window. We have been patient for 300 years. We have smiled while they insulted us. We have traded fairly while they cheated us. We have mourned our dead while they laughed. But patience has a limit. We have reached ours. The last human transport lifted off from Station Vela that evening. Suho watched through the window as the alien city grew smaller and smaller. He thought about all the years he had spent there. All the meetings, all the negotiations, all the careful, polite words. It had all been for nothing. Around him, his staff sat in silence. Some of them looked sad, some looked angry, but all of them looked determined. They knew what was coming. They knew what humanity was about to become. In the darkness of space, thousands of human ships moved toward home. They formed a river of light stretching across the void. Behind them, they left empty stations and confused aliens. Ambassador Varath watched them go and told himself it meant nothing. Director Beek Mina watched the reports come in and smiled. Admiral Park. Yuna set her course for Earth and began planning, and across the Sol system. The first construction crews arrived at their stations. They carried tools and blueprints, and 300 years of quiet rage, the galaxy had called humanity primitive, emotional, weak. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 6 months passed. 6 months of complete silence. Not a single human ship crossed the border. Not a single human voice was heard on any channel. The space around Sol system became dark and quiet. It was as if humanity had simply vanished. At first, the Galactic Council did not worry. Counselor Vorath told everyone that humans would return soon. They were too connected to galactic trade. They needed the other species too much. This isolation was just a political statement. It would end soon, but weeks turned into months, and the silence continued. The problem started slowly. Food shipment did not arrive at a hegemony colony. Then another, then a dozen more. The colonies began to complain. They began to panic. Where was the grain from the Terran agricultural worlds? Where were the vegetables? Where was the meat? The hegemony had never grown its own food in large amounts. Why would they? Human farmers were efficient and cheap. It was easier to buy from them than to build their own farms. For 200 years, the hegemony had depended on human food. Now that food was gone, manufacturing stations across the collective began to shut down. They could not get the rare minerals they needed. These minerals came from human mining operations. Without them, the factories could not build ships, they could not build weapons, they could not build anything. The Federation found itself without fusion cores. Human engineers had designed these cores 50 years ago. The design was complicated and secret. Without the cores, Federation ships could not travel at full speed. Their military power dropped by half. Across the galaxy, species that had ignored humanity for centuries suddenly realized a terrible truth. They needed humans. They had always needed humans. Now humans were gone. High Counselor Marith called emergency meeting after emergency meeting. She was an old creature with silver scales and a voice like breaking glass. She had ruled the council for 80 years. She had never faced a crisis like this. "We must establish contact," she demanded. "Send diplomatic ships, send gifts, send apologies. We must bring them back." They sent 12 ships to the border of Terran space. The ships carried diplomats and translators and expensive presents. They carried promises of new treaties and better treatment. None of them returned. Intelligence Chief Otason watched the alien ships approach on his screen. He was a young man, only 40 years old, but his hair was already white from stress. He commanded the defense network that now surrounded all of human space. "They are ignoring our warnings," his officer reported. "They continue to approach." Tayson nodded slowly. "Then they have made their choice." The defense platforms fired. 12 ships became 12 clouds of burning metal. There were no survivors. There were no recordings. The galaxy would never know what had happened to their diplomats. "Send no message," Tayson ordered. "Let them wonder." Admiral Nolth of the Hegemony military received the news with shaking hands. He was a veteran of many wars. He had conquered dozens of worlds, but he had never seen anything like this. "They destroyed diplomatic vessels," he whispered. "Without warning, without negotiation," his assistant nodded. "Our long-range scans have detected something else, Admiral." The screen changed to show the Sol system. Nolth leaned forward. His eyes went wide. The space around Earth was filled with construction. Massive shipyards floated in orbit around every planet. Weapons platforms the size of small moons were being built near the asteroid belt. The entire system had become a factory of war. "What are they building?" Nolth asked. "We cannot tell exactly, Admiral, but the scale is... we have never seen anything like it. They are converting entire moons into military bases. They are building ships by the thousands." Nolth sat back in his chair. His 4 hands were shaking. "They're not just isolating themselves," he said quietly. "They are preparing." The word he could not say hung in the air. War. The humans were preparing for war. On Earth. President Shindeho stood before the United Nations of Humanity. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from every human world, every colony, every station. Billions more watched through screens across the Sol system. Deho was a simple man with simple words. He had grown up on a farming colony. He had lost his parents to a pirate attack when he was young. That attack, he had learned years later, had been arranged by the collective. "For 300 years," he began, "we reached out with open hands. We shared everything we had. Our technology, our medicine, our food, our knowledge. We believed that friendship was possible. We believed that different species could live together in peace." His voice grew harder. "We were fools." The hall was silent. "They took our kindness and called it weakness. They took our patience and called it stupidity. They took our children and worked them to death in their minds. They took our colonies and taxed them until they starved. They took our trust and stabbed us in the back." He paused. His eyes were cold. "New Sol. Do you remember New Sol? 4 million people. Men, women, children. Killed by a disease that was built in a hegemony laboratory. Killed because they asked for fair wages. Killed because the hegemony wanted to send a message." Tears ran down many faces in the hall. Everyone knew someone who had died on New Sol. Everyone remembered. "The galaxy taught us a lesson," Deho continued. "They taught us that kindness is punished. They taught us that mercy is weakness. They taught us that the only thing they respect is strength." He raised his fist. "So we will show them strength. We will build ships that darken the stars. We will forge weapons that make suns tremble. We will create an army that the galaxy has never seen. And when we are ready, we will teach them a lesson of our own." The hall exploded with cheering. It was not a happy sound. It was dark and angry and full of pain. It was the sound of a species that had finally stopped hoping for peace. In the shipyards of Mars, workers moved around the clock. They built destroyers and cruisers and carriers. They built weapons that had only existed in theory before. They built with hands that did not shake and eyes that did not blink. On Titan, scientists worked on secret projects. They created new engines that moved faster than anything in the galaxy. They designed shields that could stop any weapon. They invented bombs that could make stars explode. On Europa, the first soldiers of the Terran Expeditionary Corps began their training. They were young and old, male and female, from every corner of human space. They trained 16 hours a day. They learned to fight in space and on land and underwater. They learned to kill without hesitation. Director Beek Mina watched all of this from her office beneath the Korean mountains. She had waited 15 years for this moment. She had sacrificed everything for it. Her assistant brought her a report. "The council is panicking," he said. "They are demanding to know what we are planning." Mina smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Let them panic," she said. "Let them lose sleep. Let them feel, for once, what we have felt for 300 years." She looked at the construction reports on her screen. 40,000 ships. 800 million soldiers. Weapons that could end civilizations. "When we are done," she said quietly, "they will never forget the price of betraying humanity." Outside, the stars continued to burn. The galaxy continued to turn. And in the darkness of Terran space, a sleeping giant was finally waking up. The files appeared everywhere at the same moment. Every news network, every public screen, every personal device across the galaxy lit up with the same message. The truth was finally coming out. Ambassador Choi Nari watched from a small ship hidden near the galactic core. She was an old woman now, with white hair and deep lines on her face. 15 years of her life had gone into gathering this evidence. 15 years of lies and danger and sacrifice. Now, the galaxy would see what she had found. The first file was called the Vorath Conspiracy. It contained thousands of documents from hegemony laboratories. It showed the design of a biological weapon. It showed the testing on prisoners. It showed the order to release it on New Sol Colony. The weapon was designed to kill humans and only humans. It attacked their lungs and their hearts. It made them bleed from the inside. The hegemony scientists had written detailed notes about how the victims would suffer before they died. 4 million people. Men who had worked in the mines, women who had raised families, children who had never done anything wrong, all of them murdered because a corporation wanted to save money on wages. The second file was called the Collective Betrayal. It contained financial records going back 100 years. The Collective had been selling information to pirates, the location of human ships, their cargo, their defenses. For every ship that was attacked, the Collective received 20% of the stolen goods. Thousands of human merchants had died. Thousands of families had lost everything. The Collective had made billions from their deaths. The third file was the sealed recording from the Galactic Council. 147 species had gathered in secret. They had discussed the human problem. Humans were spreading too fast. They were becoming too successful. They needed to be controlled. The vote was unanimous. Every species agreed. Humanity would be classified as a subordinate species. This meant they had fewer rights. It meant they could be taxed more. It meant their voices would never matter in galactic politics. The recording showed the council members laughing after the vote. One of them made a joke about humans being like pets. They all laughed harder. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched these files in horror. Many did not believe it at first. It had to be fake. It had to be human propaganda. But the evidence was too detailed. The documents were too real. The truth could not be denied. On the hegemony homeworld, riots broke out in the streets. Citizens demanded answers from their government. How could they have done this? How could they have murdered 4 million innocent people? The hegemony leadership tried to deny everything. They said the files were lies. They said humans had created them. But their own scientists came forward. Their own officials admitted the truth. The cover-up was falling apart. In the Collective, the trading guilds turned on each other. Everyone wanted to blame someone else. Ships that had worked together for centuries now pointed weapons at each other. The economy collapsed in days. The council tried to hold emergency sessions, but half the delegates refused to attend. They were afraid of their own citizens. They were afraid of what humanity might do next. Ambassador Nari watched all of this from her hidden ship. A young officer sat beside her, recording everything for the historical archive. "You destroyed them," the officer said. Without firing a single weapon, Nari shook her head. "I did not destroy them. I only showed the truth. They destroyed themselves long ago." They just did not know it yet. She thought about her own family. Her brother had been a merchant captain. His ship had been attacked by pirates when she was young. He had been killed along with his entire crew. For years, she had thought it was random bad luck. Then she had learned the truth. The collective had sold his location. They had known exactly when and where the pirates would attack. Her brother's death had made someone rich. I spent 15 years in their shadow, she said quietly. I smiled at creatures who had murdered my brother. I ate dinner with officials who had signed death warrants for human children. I pretended to be their friend while I copied their secrets. She looked at the burning cities on the hegemony homeworld. 15 years of lies, and it was worth every moment. On the border of Terran space, something unexpected began to happen. Ships started arriving. Not warships. Not diplomats. Refugees. They came from dozens of different species. They were scientists and workers and families. They were the ones who had always known the truth. They were the ones who had tried to speak out and been silenced. Commander Huang Miso was in charge of border security that day. She was a young woman with sharp eyes and a quick mind. She had orders to destroy any ship that crossed into Terran space. But these ships were not attacking. They were begging. Please, came the message from the first ship. We know what our governments did. We tried to stop them. They called us traitors. They tried to kill us. We have nowhere else to go. Miso contacted her superiors. The message went all the way to President Shin De-ho. The president thought for a long time. Then he made his decision. Let them in, he said. We are not like them. We do not punish the innocent for the crimes of the guilty. Bring them to Earth. Give them homes. Give them hope. Refugees crossed the border. Many of them were crying. They had expected to die. Instead, they found humans waiting with food and blankets and kind words. Why are you helping us? Asked an old scientist from the collective. After everything our species did to you? The human who greeted him was named Park Junho. He was a simple worker from a processing station. He had lost 2 cousins on New Sol. Because we remember what it is like to be alone, Junho said. Because we know what it is like to have the whole galaxy against you. Because if we become as cruel as our enemies, then they have already won. He put his hand on the old scientist's shoulder. We are not fighting because we hate your species. We are fighting because we love our own. There is a difference. Word spread quickly among the refugees. Humanity was not what they had been told. Humans were not primitive or stupid or violent. They were kind. They were fair. They remembered their pain, but they did not let it make them monsters. Thousands of refugees asked to join the Terran cause. Scientists offered their knowledge. Engineers offered their skills. Soldiers offered their lives. Director Beekmina reviewed each application personally. She was suspicious at first. These could be spies. They could be assassins. The galaxy had betrayed humanity too many times. But her investigators found something surprising. Many of these refugees had been working against their own governments for years. They had tried to leak information about the crimes against humanity. They had been arrested. They had been tortured. They had escaped and run toward the only species that might understand. They are not our enemies, Mina reported to the president. They are victims, just like us. The president nodded. Then they are welcome. Let them fight beside us. Let them share in our victory, and let the galaxy see that humanity fights for justice, not for revenge. But even as he spoke these words, Deho knew they were not entirely true. Justice was part of it, but revenge was there too. It burned in his heart every time he thought of New Sol. It burned in the heart of every human who had lost someone too. Galactic cruelty. They would be merciful when they could. They would be fair when possible. But they would not stop until every species that had hurt them understood the price of their actions. In her hidden ship, Ambassador Nari received a message. Her mission was complete. She could finally come home. She set her course for Earth and smiled. For 15 years, she had lived in darkness. Now, she would see the dawn. And what a dawn it would be, the Terran. War Council met deep beneath Mount Baekdu in Korea. The mountain had been hollowed out over the past year. Miles of tunnels stretched in every direction. Command centers and barracks and weapons storage filled the darkness. It was the heart of humanity's war machine. Fleet Admiral Song Huan stood at the center of the circular room. He was a large man with broad shoulders and a face full of scars. He had fought pirates for 30 years. He had lost an eye in a battle near the collective border. Now he commanded the largest military force humanity had ever built. "The Retribution fleet is ready," he announced. His voice was calm and steady. 42,000 vessels, 12 super dreadnoughts of the Judgment class, 800 battleships, 3,000 cruisers. The rest are destroyers, carriers, and support craft. He touched a control, and a holographic map appeared above the table. It showed the Sol system surrounded by thousands of tiny lights. Each light was a ship. Every vessel has been tested. Every crew has been trained. We can launch within 24 hours of receiving the order. Defense Minister Kimbora nodded. She was a small woman with silver hair and eyes like ice. She had spent her entire life in the military. Her husband had been killed by pirates 40 years ago. Her son had died in a mining accident caused by hegemony negligence. "Ground forces are also ready," she reported. "The Terran Expeditionary Corps now numbers 800 million soldiers. They are equipped with Gen 7 powered armor, orbital drop pods, and personal shield generators." She pulled up another display. It showed soldiers training in zero gravity, fighting in simulated alien environments, practicing landings on hostile worlds. "We have also created specialized units," she continued. "Urban combat teams, deep infiltration squads, planetary siege divisions. Whatever environment we encounter, we have soldiers trained to fight in it." President Shindeho listened carefully. He had been awake for 3 days. The weight of what was coming pressed on him like a mountain. He was about to order the deaths of millions, perhaps billions. There would be no going back. In the special projects. He asked quietly. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what he was asking about. Dr. Yoon Ji-ho stood up. She was a young woman with glasses and messy hair. She looked like a university student, but she was the most brilliant physicist humanity had ever produced. "Project Sunfire is complete," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking slightly. "We have successfully weaponized stellar ignition." She activated a new display. It showed a star surrounded by strange devices. "These are quantum destabilizers," she explained. "When activated near a main sequence star, they cause a cascade reaction in the stellar core. The reaction is irreversible. Within 72 hours, the star will go supernova." The generals and admirals stared at the display in silence. "One weapon can destroy an entire solar system," Ji-ho continued. "Every planet, every moon, every station, everything within light years will be sterilized." President Daeho closed his eyes. He had hoped this moment would never come. He had hoped the galaxy would see reason. He had hoped for peace. Hope was dead now. "How many do we have?" he asked. 47, Ji-ho replied. "Enough to destroy every major homeworld in the galaxy." Admiral Song Wan leaned forward. "Mr. President, I must advise against using these weapons except as a last resort. The destruction would be total. There would be no surrender. No negotiation. Just death on a scale the galaxy has never seen." "I understand," Daeho said. "These weapons are not for victory. They are for defeat." Everyone looked at him in confusion. "If we lose this war," he explained, "if humanity falls, we will not fall alone. We will take every species that wronged us into the void with us. The galaxy will remember what they did to us, and the galaxy will die remembering." The room was silent for a long moment. Then, one by one, the officers nodded. They understood. This was not just a war for survival. This was a statement. Humanity would never be victims again. Even in death, they would be victorious in the shipyards of Mars. A young engineer named Cho Minji worked on the final systems of the super dreadnought, Eternal Soul. She had been working 16-hour days for 8 months. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep. Her hands were covered in burns and cuts, but she did not complain. Her grandmother had died on New Sol. Her parents had never recovered from the loss. They had spent her entire childhood in grief, slowly fading away until there was nothing left. Mingi worked because she remembered. She worked because she refused to forget. The Eternal Soul was the largest ship humanity had ever built. It was 3 kilometers long. It carried enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Its shields could withstand the combined firepower of 100 enemy vessels. And at its heart was a memorial. A small room with 4 million names carved into the walls. The names of everyone who had died on New Sol. Every visitor to the ship had to walk through this room. Before reaching the bridge, Admiral Park Yuna would command this vessel. She had requested it specifically. Her mother had been a doctor on New Sol. She had stayed behind to treat the sick, while others fled. She had died holding the hand of a child she could not save. Yuna visited the memorial every day. She found her mother's name and touched it gently. Soon, she whispered, soon they will understand what they took from us. On Europa, the training camps never closed. Soldiers trained day and night. They learned to fight in every condition. Heat and cold. Light and darkness. Gravity and weightlessness. Sergeant Major Han Dong-woo watched his newest recruits struggle through a combat course. They were young. Most had never fired a weapon before joining the corps, but they learned fast. Pain was a good teacher. Again, he shouted, faster. The enemy will not wait for you to catch your breath. A young woman fell and cut her face on a rock. She got up immediately and kept running. Blood streamed down her cheek, but she did not slow down. Dong-woo smiled. That was the spirit humanity needed. That was the fire that would burn across the galaxy. He had lost his entire squad to a collective ambush 20 years ago. They had been on a routine patrol near the border. The collective had claimed it was a misunderstanding, an accident. The council had accepted their explanation. Dong-woo had sworn that day to train the soldiers who would make the collective pay. Now his soldiers numbered in the hundreds of millions, and they were ready. In the command center beneath Mount Baekdu, President Daeho gave his final address to the War Council. In 3 days we will cross the border, he said. We will not go as diplomats or traitors or friends. We will go as conquerors. We will go as judges. We will go as executioners. He looked at each officer in turn. Some of you will not survive this war. Some of your soldiers will not come home. We will pay a terrible price for what we are about to do. He paused. We have already paid a terrible price for peace. New Sol, the merchant ships, the colonies that starved under unfair taxes, our children who worked themselves to death in alien mines. We paid for peace with blood and tears and broken dreams. His voice hardened. Now we will pay for war. And when we are done, the galaxy will know that humanity is not weak. We are not primitive. We are not subordinate. We are a species that remembers its debts. And we always collect. The officers saluted as one. In 3 days. The war would begin in 3 days. The galaxy would burn, and humanity would light the fire. The Retribution Fleet crossed the border on the anniversary of New Sol. This was not an accident. President Shin Daeho had chosen the date carefully. He wanted the galaxy to understand exactly why this was happening. He wanted them to remember 40-2,000 ships moved through space like a wave of steel and fire. At the center of the formation flew the super dreadnought Eternal Soul, its hull covered with the names of the dead. Admiral Park Yuna stood on the bridge, watching the stars slide past. Signal from the Hegemony Border Fleet. Her communications officer reported, "They are demanding we halt and explain our presence." Yuna did not smile. She had not smiled in a very long time. "Send them one message," she said. "For words. We remember New Sol." The message went out. There was no response. High Counselor Marath received the transmission in her private chambers on the council station. Her silver scales had turned gray with stress over the past months. She had not slept in days. The galaxy was falling apart, and she did not know how to stop it. "We remember New Sol," she read aloud. Her assistant stood nearby, trembling. "What does it mean?" the assistant asked. Marith closed her eyes. It means they are not coming to negotiate. It means they are not coming for conquest. They are coming for revenge. She opened her eyes and looked at the tactical display. 42,000 human ships against the hegemonies, 2,000. It was not a battle. It was an execution. The first shots were fired at 0600 Galactic Standard Time. The hegemony fleet tried to hold their position. They were experienced warriors. They had won dozens of campaigns against lesser species. It did not matter. Human weapons tore through hegemony shields like paper. Human tactics were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. They were brutal. They were fast. They were without mercy. Commander Yoon Sejin led the first assault wave from his destroyer, the Memory. He was 28 years old. His parents had been killed by pirates when he was a child. The collective had arranged the attack. All weapons, continuous fire, he ordered. No pauses. No warnings. No quarter. His ship danced through the enemy formation, firing constantly. Hegemony vessels exploded around him. Escape pods launched into space. His weapons crews looked at him, waiting for orders to cease fire. Keep firing, he said. Destroy the pods. One of his officers hesitated. Sir, those are survivors. They are defenseless. Sejin turned to look at him. His eyes were empty. The children of New Sol were defenseless. The merchants the collective sold to pirates were defenseless. Our colonies under unfair taxation were defenseless. He turned back to the tactical display. They showed no mercy to the defenseless. Neither will we. The escape pods burned. Across the battle, 2,000 hegemony ships died in 11 minutes. There were no survivors. There were no prisoners. The human fleet moved through the wreckage without slowing down. Word spread across the galaxy like fire. The humans were not conquering. They were not negotiating. They were erasing. The collective leadership received the news and immediately voted to surrender. They sent 17 ships carrying diplomats and peace offerings. They sent apologies and promises and everything they thought humans might want. Admiral Song Hwan intercepted. The collective vessels 3 light years from their border, they are offering unconditional surrender, his communications officer reported. They will accept any terms we demand. Song considered this for a moment. He thought about the files director Beek Mina had shown him. Thousands of human ships sold to pirates. Millions of credits earned from human blood. Turn their envoys, he said finally. Sir, return them. In pieces, the collective received their diplomats in 17 sealed containers. After that, no species tried to surrender. On the council station, chaos reigned. Half the delegates had already fled toward the galactic rim. The other half were screaming at each other, trying to find someone to blame. High Counselor Marith tried to maintain order, but it was hopeless. The humans were coming, and nothing could stop them. Admiral Park Yuna led the assault on the first hegemony colony world. It was a planet called Vorthan, home to 50 million people. Most were civilians, workers, families. Admiral, her tactical officer, said carefully, the planet is offering to surrender. They are lowering their defenses. Yuna looked at the blue-green world on her display. It was beautiful, peaceful, innocent. She thought about New Sol. She thought about her mother dying, alone in a hospital filled with screaming children. She thought about the hegemony scientists who had designed the plague and the officials who had ordered its release. Target their military installations only, she said finally. Civilians are not to be harmed. Her officers looked relieved. But she continued to arrest their government officials. All of them. They will stay on trial for crimes against humanity. And when they are found guilty, they will be executed. The ground assault was swift and precise. Human soldiers landed in waves, their powered armor making them nearly invincible. The hegemony military fought back, but they were outmatched in every way. Sergeant Major Hun Dong-woo led his company through the capital city. Alien civilians ran from them, screaming in fear. He did not harm them. He was not there for them. He found the planetary governor hiding in a basement beneath his mansion. The governor was an old creature with gray skin and trembling hands. "Please," the governor begged. I had nothing to do with New Seoul. I was just following orders. Dongwoo looked at him without emotion. "The merchants my squad was protecting were just doing their jobs too," he said. "Your government sold them to pirates anyway." He raised his weapon. "This is not murder. This is justice." The trial lasted 3 hours. The execution lasted 3 seconds. Across the galaxy, humanity advanced on 100 fronts. Hegemony worlds fell one after another. Collective stations surrendered and were occupied. Species that had voted to classify humanity as subordinate watched. Human fleets approached their homeworlds. The council convened for the final time. Only a dozen delegates remained. High Counselor Marith addressed them with tears running down her scaled face. "We created this," she said. Her voice was broken. "We took a young species. They came to us with hope. They came with open hands and curious eyes. They wanted to be friends. They wanted to belong." She looked at the empty seats around her, and what did we do? We cheated them. We enslaved them. We murdered their children and laughed about it. We taught them that kindness was weakness. We taught them that the galaxy respected only strength. She looked at the holographic display showing human fleets surrounding another world. Now they are showing us strength, and we deserve everything that is coming. On Earth, President Shin Dae-ho watched the reports come in. Victory after victory. World after world. The galaxy that had oppressed humanity for 3 centuries was falling. His daughter Yoonbi stood beside him. She was 18 now, wearing the uniform of the Terran Expeditionary Corps. Tomorrow she would ship out to join the fighting. "Father," she said quietly, "do you think we will ever stop?" Dae-ho was silent for a long moment. "I do not know," he admitted. Revenge is a fire that feeds itself. The more you have, the more you want. He turned to look at her. "But I do know this. The galaxy will never forget what they did to us. And they will never forget what we did to them. For 1,000 years, species will tell stories about the humans. They will say, 'Do not anger them. Do not betray them.' Because when humans finally decide to fight, they do not stop until the fight is finished." He put his hand on her shoulder. "We came to the stars hoping to find family. Instead, we found enemies. So we will show them what enemies we can be. And maybe someday, when the fighting is over, we will build something better." Yoonbi nodded slowly. "And if we cannot build something better," Dae-ho looked out at the stars, "then at least we will build something that lasts. Something the galaxy will remember forever." The war continued for 7 more years. 11 species surrendered completely. 4 were reduced to a handful of survivors. The hegemony ceased to exist as a political entity. The collective broke into 1,000 fragments, and humanity claimed its place among the stars, not as subordinates, not as victims, not as friends, as conquerors. On the anniversary of the war's end, a monument was built in the ruins of the council station. It was simple, a black stone pillar with words carved in every language of the galaxy. "We came in peace. We were answered with betrayal. Now we come with fire, and we will be answered with silence." Below that, in smaller letters, were 4 million names, the dead of New Seoul, remembered forever, and beside the monument stood a single human soldier. Keeping eternal watch, the galaxy had wanted war. Now they had peace, the human kind of peace.